evening. Now the technical problems have been handled. Let me hope those who are following us on Facebook can be able to see this live stream. My name is George Justice Kanyihamba, and I'm also known as George Freeman, and I'm the founder of the African Justice Media based in Uganda. Our office is in Mukono in Uganda. Now, today we have a fantastic session. Those who are following us on Facebook, please leave your comment in the comment section. I hope you're gonna enjoy this discussion. Today, we're gonna speak about a very different and unique topic, and that is, the topic is capitalism good for Africa? So whether it is good or not good, we have our fantastic speakers who are going to be speaking passionately about the topic, today's topic tonight. So without wasting time, allow me introduce the first speaker, if he is on this session, Mugabe John Socrates. He is the founder and director of Action for Liberty and Economic Development, a libertarian think tank that is based in Uganda. Mugabe John Socrates graduated in economics at Kyambogo University in Uganda again. Now, Mugabe again graduated from the Atlas Leadership Academy. Mugabe John Socrates, welcome to this session, and briefly tell us about how do you understand capitalism? And what is your view about capitalism? You are welcome, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, our host. I think I'm clear.
Yes, go on.
Very great. I'm Mugabe John Socrates. First of all, I would like to appreciate the Justice Media for creating this platform where we can share, converse, and even be able to understand some ideas and the dynamics of society. As you've said, I'm the director of Action for Liberty and Economic Development, a libertarian think tank which promotes a free and prosperous society with the aspect of entrepreneurship and individual liberty. I'm so grateful that we have come to an understanding where we are able to discuss one of the fundamental topic and also system which many people in Africa get wrong, and many of our intellectuals. To my own understanding, the word capitalism may sound intellectual, it may sound with other attachment and sentiments which may be attached to it. But for me, when you say, is capitalism necessary for Africa, or can capitalism develop Africa? It's like saying, can Africans be allowed to create wealth? Can Africans be given freedom to relate, trade, and also voluntarily cooperate with each other? Because capitalism is the system which believes that wealth is created by using the mind, reasoning, and also being able to be free to use those two aspects, reasoning, mind, and you as an individual, and then you create value, and that value can be created, can be exchanged, but it is not exchanged freely, it's exchanged with the value so that you can be able to sustain the system. It has a reward. It has a reward when you produce. And we know very well that there is no any other system in the world which has lifted millions and millions of people from poverty to prosperity or to living, even in Africa. I would like to start with Africa. When we look at Africa and we talk about capitalism, we usually relate it to, even many scholars, to colonialism, to imperialism. But Africa, before the white man coming or anyone, it used to have this free trade. Africa used to be like a one continent, where even where we had chiefdoms, people could be able to exchange goods. And whenever government, or by then what we could call the chiefdoms, existed also to ensure, we give an example of the Buganda kingdom. In Buganda, they had a central system but the individual people were free to trade their goods, and then they would be able sometime to give their king. They had that freedom. But now we have a way how people perceive capitalism. The word capitalism, as related and defined by Karl Marx, depending on the people, because for him, he defined it according to the people who own capital, who produce capital, and then who use capital to satisfy the other. But capitalism, besides having that word, it's simply free enterprise. Me and you being able to exchange our goods and also to have a property right to what we produce and what we own without interference, without external interference, which gives us a thinking, or which enforces a thinking that me, you, me and George and others, if we are not interfered, we are disastrous. We are not able to do that exchange on our own. And capitalism has many assumptions in Africa, where some people relate it to greed, to self-interest. I would like to talk about, it is very true, capitalism moves with self-interest. And every human being, even from our creation, wherever we are, wherever you're created, self-interest is what you as a person, you consider more important in your life. What we consider, what George may consider more important in your life may not be the same to me. So there you become selfish with what you consider more useful according to your aspiration. And then more people, when they talk about selfishness, they look at it in a certain angle where they marry it with greed. But for example, if I want machines, let me say if I want a techno survey, I like so much to see that people can be able to communicate with others using this technical and also this technology. Someone may not be obsessed with that, but I may be. Let me use the word obsessed. So what do? I spend more time, I spend whichever resources I can to make sure that I specialize in it, and then I make production more bigger, but I also make it more and more efficient. So in that process, I may be able to serve as many people as I can. And when I serve many people with that special value I've created, I'm going to accumulate rewards. And that reward is going to be the money. People, when they buy, when what you produce gives another person value, you will find that that person will reward you. And then when he rewards you, you become more and more richer. And that's where the problem is, that people who have created more and more meaningful products and services have made them rich. And then people have created some definition as the 1%, the 10%. But then they forget that these people, they don't steal money. But what they do is they create a service which everyone almost on earth can get value from it. So what they do, they use the democracy of the market. When you use market democracy, where a buyer and a seller, or a producer and maybe a consumer in that way, is able to interact and determine whether the good on the market is good for him or has value for him. If it has no value, he will not be able to buy that. And then they reject. There are many entrepreneurs in Africa, when they make their goods don't get bought by others, or it's get rejected on the market by one way. That's the self-regulation. The market regulates this entrepreneur. And when they don't have customer, they will make sure that that good will not come to the market, even if you produce. So that is the natural system, which has the natural rules of law, whereby if something does not work for me, I have the audacity, I have the freedom to leave it, and I choose the other one. So freedom of choice is part of the system that has lifted very many people out of poverty, and where many regard it or call it capitalism. Lastly, as I conclude about that, it is the price system. We have many countries in Africa which do want to put price ceilings and price floor, which I mean that they should regulate prices. But this is what free market or capitalism is. Everyone is able to use the price as a way of voting in the market. When the price is high, and then that good which you are buying, you cannot afford it, you will refuse it, you will not buy it. So capitalism has that opportunity where each and every individual can be able to choose on his own what is good and what he is able to buy. And I would end with this, that there is no system that proves that there is no one size fit for all as capitalism. One size fit for all, I mean, that's where we believe there are intellectuals in the society, they are experts who can design how better everyone in the society can live, who can design a system in which everyone will take the same education, everyone will take the same good, everyone will take the same housing, like what we saw in Ujamaa, where Nyerere thought that he has the right solution of one size fit for all, where he wanted all the Tanzanians to live in the same house, to have the same purchasing power, to consume the same good. There is no that one size fit for all. And capitalism operates on that there is no one size fit for all, where everyone was created differently and everyone has his or her own goal. And those goals must be respected by the rule of law, where you are able to use your conscious reasoning and then pursue the value by the means you can use. So I'd like to end by saying that there is no system which has enabled very many people, even in Uganda where I am, to be able to get an affordable TV, or what I call a television set, or a refrigerator, which is made in South Korea or China, like capitalism. Capitalism has enabled us to get goods which we don't produce here. Like, for example, the phone I'm having today. It has been made affordable on the market here because some countries have opened up the border for goods to flow without putting a punishment of production, which I call the taxes. So I am able right now to be able to use this and I get value, but I've not got it for free. I bought it at a certain level, which someone can call expensively, but I believe it is more than what I bought it because it has given me value. So I don't look at the money, but I look at the value. But I also look at how many people buy the figure or the cash I've used to buy it who have benefited through it. So thank you very much. That's my understanding.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. That was fantastic of you. I wouldn't want to rebut because I'm assuming a lot of a moderator, and as LM Rodin prepares, I'll go to Pauline Abunyewa all the way from Ghana. Pauline Abunyewa from Ghana, she is a Pan-Africanist. She is a nurse by profession, an ALT nurse by profession, and she is a student at the University of Ghana. Pauline Abunyewa, welcome to this show. And since you're the first Pan-Africanist to speak, you are also going to define for us the way you understand capitalism and what is your view about capitalism as an ideology. Now, to remind all the members who are following us here on Facebook, if you have a question, put your question in the comment section. We have a session for questions. We are going to ask these speakers we have here if they gave you maybe information that has no evidence. I see some people have been inboxing me about the evidence of Mugabe, John Socrates. We are going to come back to John Socrates and he will have to answer those queries. So going to Pauline Abunyewa, welcome and the floor is yours. Speak about what you understand as capitalism and what is your view about capitalism. Welcome, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Justice, for your time. To me, capitalism is an economic system whereby private enterprises determine, whereby private enterprises determine the country's profits, or economic system whereby the trade and industry is operated or controlled by private sectors, or let me say a private enterprise. So for me, capitalism is not favorable for Africa due to a whole lot of conditions that comes our way. Like Mr. Mugabe said earlier, in Uganda, there are no fridges or refrigerators that are fixed in Uganda, but rather they are being imported because of pricing system and a whole lot of other things, to like stable currency. Because Africa, we don't have stable currency. Always our currency is competing with the Western currencies, thereby making our currencies being lesser in front of the Western currencies. That is why capitalism is not good for Africa, in my view. So capitalism, in short, is like is whereby countries' trade and industry is operated by private entities or private organizations. That is the brief explanation I can give from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. Now, I'll hold you there. Now, as an option, if you don't think capitalism is good for Africa, what do you think could be the right ideology? Because yes, Africa is in poverty, and we as young Africans, as intellectuals, we are looking at what ideology can develop, because you cannot lift people out of poverty without the ideas, and ideas are the ones that make ideologies. So what other option besides capitalism do you think is the right option or strategy?
Capitalism could have been good for Africa if certain things are curtailed or put in place. Yes.
Like?
Okay. If you are to stop craving for Western products and services, or Western goods and services, then capitalism could have been good. Because, for instance, in Africa, we have a whole lot of resources. But because we are not, we don't produce certain things to our level, but we rather yearn for or craft for European and Western goods and services. Thereby, we underrate our own standards. So in that case, it doesn't make Africa suit the capitalism we want.
Okay.
Moreover, for capitalism to be well or do well for Africa, we also have to ban some fully funded foreign educations, because when scholarships are given to students, they want the best students, especially in the universities. They want the first class students just to fund their tuition in abroad. Therefore, our skilled people will always be out of the country and will be funded for their education. And then afterwards, they also remain in that same country and help their private sector to grow and improve.
Okay, that's all. Thank you so much. That was good. So as Peter Bismarck prepares, I'm going to go straight to L.M. Roden, also known as L.M. Nyong'o, a Pan-Africanist, and he calls himself Nyong'o because he loves Pan-Africanism. He's passionate about Pan-Africanism. So he is a student of political science, so therefore he's a political science at Makerere University in Uganda. L.M. Roden loves Pan-Africanism, and he is the president of the Makerere University Political Science Students Association, also known as MUPOSA. Now, Roden, as I'm bringing you in, I may not give you the opportunity, but let me give it to you. I'll give you an opportunity to define how do you understand capitalism? And also, what is your view? How do you analyze capitalism? You're welcome. Take up the floor. It is yours, sir. Roden, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Someone, hello everyone. It's a wonderful evening to everyone. I'm very happy to be part of this. The host has asked me of what capitalism is, and I also want to assure you that according to Check Antadeo, says that is by isolating oneself from the historical framework, one becomes exhausted in a false battle without knowing it, slicing the air with sharp sword lashes. So for us to understand capitalism, won't just need only a definition as others would be. This is not a primary school where we can define things and understand definitions by things, but we should understand the historicity of capitalism. And this would enable us, or this would require us to have a historical and dialectical materialism. You have to understand one thing. The history of classes was a history of class struggles, and these class struggles were always political. That's why sometimes whenever we're having some arguments, other people tend to think that they can ignore the side of politics in issues, but no. So to understand capitalism, you have to understand the history of capitalism itself. I don't know if at all I can go through this in a faster way, but this is a very big topic that should be discussed into details. First of all, first and foremost, yes. When I talk about capitalism, you have to understand that it began, okay, we can trace its origin in Europe. It started from primitivity. It went into slavery mode of production, where people were enslaving each other. So in that case, people had to revolt. Some workers, some slaves had to revolt until it now changed. The modes kept on changing. It was a history of class struggles. From slavery, it went to feudalism. And in feudalism, you know what happens. There are the landowners and the landless serfs. So this is just like as we are right now in Uganda, where you have the landlord and you're the tenant. So it was that relationship. So kind of kingdoms. It was like kingdoms. It was like the Catholics having control over the production, where they owned land, but people were working in the lands. So from feudalism, things kept on changing. There were some serfs who had skills, and these were involved in something that I can call artisanal mode of production, where they had skills, where they could even make chairs, they could make metals, they could make spears. And the merchants who are coming from the industrial areas, well, let me say like from the urban areas, had to come and harness these people and take them to the urban areas. That's where now industrial capitalism came in. So much of this happened in Europe. And as we are tracing this, we have to understand one thing. Slavery was having its origin in Europe. This was far different from the slavery that was in Africa itself. So you should understand how these things here kept on changing. It was some stages of development happening step by step. So from primitivity, feudalism, industrial capitalism, mercantile capitalism to industrial capitalism. That's where now there was what I can call urbanization happening in Europe. So it was now becoming tough, hard, and people were not in position to sustain all this. So there came the law of vagabondism, where now they wanted to displace these unemployed youth who are landering in the streets of Europe or in the Manchester and Liverpool places to look for places where they can displace them or where they can put them. That's where now they had to discover America in 1492 by Columbus. So when they had to do this, they had to now look for other places where they could ensure that these unemployed people could go and work and produce food or produce raw materials and export back or import back to Europe. So that's how capitalism was. And even in the process of them colonizing America by then, and Ireland and other places like in the world by then, all that was happening because of capitalism itself. So this never ended just like that. The process kept on going. So there came in the Papal Bull, where the Pope had to sign a document that was to enslave all those who are non-believers. That's where now slavery or slave trade happened now in Africa. That's where Portugal and Spain had to get an opportunity to come in Africa, to come and get slaves and import them back to Europe. Now, in that process, now what happened was now what we call the transatlantic slave trade. So in the transatlantic slave trade, they were now looking for ways of getting raw materials from where? From Africa, raw materials inclusive of the what? Inclusive of the slaves, and taking them to Europe. Taking them to America. From America, they would take them to plantations where they would produce raw materials and take them back to Europe. So it was a transatlantic slave trade, and Walter Rodney shows to us that all over 300 million Africans were taken to the slave market in America. So in that case, what happened next was now, at one point now, America was now gaining industrial capitalism. It was now developing in a way that it could now sustain itself without working with what? Working with America. But remember, the Red Indians, who are the indigenous people in America, who had to be swiped off. They had to, Columbus had to use, biological warfare. That's why they had to manufacture even anthrax. They had to manufacture some other diseases to kill these indigenous people in America. That's how they had to swipe off the Red Indians, and they remained in America. So as they colonized America, they found that they could even work without Europe. So they had to break away from Europe. That's where now the economic depression happened in Europe, where Europe couldn't sustain itself. Now it had to come back to Africa. That was now where colonialism came in. I'm just going briefly on these things, but these things have to be deeply understood. However much it's not a process that I can just take into some small bits of understanding so that you can understand how it came about. So colonization of Africa wasn't for the sake of coming to civilize us. I have to tell you one thing, and you should understand one thing, that Africa was civilized before. Reading about the Great Lakes politics, sustainable, were self-sustainable. Non-African countries, the people in Africa were not beggars. That's where Lord Markley had to come and say that this is a land of wealth. People were not beggars. People were not poor. Every family almost owned almost owned livestock. So in this case, you realize that Africa itself wasn't poor. But what happened? Colonization happened. And in this case, realize that now there was land alienation. It created now a class that is called the landless class, and the landowners. Reading about the land audit in South Africa, realized that 72% of the land in South Africa is owned by white individuals, 15% is owned by colored people, and 5% is owned by Indian investors, and 4% is owned by Africans of South Africa. What does that mean? That's capitalism. So when we talk about colonialism, what happened? You should understand now they had to look for technologies of power. One has to understand how power is used. So colonization of Africa wasn't it wasn't a political thing. It wasn't for the sake of civilizing us, as they used to tell us in secondary. It wasn't for the sake of giving us education. We had education. The first university in the world was in Africa. You understand that? So much of this can be discussed about in another kind of a Zoom meeting. If at all I would wish that could happen, it would be important. So in that case, what happened now in colonization? The colonization of Africa was probably economical. It was the issue of the market. But for you to control a market, you have to have political control, hence the colonization of Africa. So colonization of Africa wasn't probably for the sake of just owning Africans. It was for the sake of the economic depression that happened in Europe that needed to be revised and needed to be reconsidered in colonizing another country, where now America had already destroyed the link between them and Europe. That's why they came to colonize Africa for four reasons only: to resettle the unemployed youth, the unemployed workers, to get raw materials, and to get land to reinvest. And here comes now, they also came to get raw materials, they came to get land for reinvestment, and even cheap labor. That's where now we have industries of the Europeans in Uganda, but we're working in them and we're never developing, because what they give us is just to sustain us for that moment. That's why someone will work in the companies for over 10 years. The person can't even build a house. Things are tough, but someone is already being comfortable with the concept of capitalism. So what happened now next? Let us say now that after colonialism, post-colonialism, what happened? Now, the last stage was now imperialism. That Kwame Nkrumah would say that the last stage of colonialism is now imperialism. Now you have to understand, colonization of Africa was basically the Europeans colonizing Africa. But I have to tell you one thing: Europe is not homogeneous. It is heterogeneous in a way that the bourgeoisie class and the political class of Europe had to be so much concerned about colonizing of Africa. That's why I heard of the scramble and partition of Africa. Now here comes the 15 million people who were murdered by King Leopold in Congo. Well, most of you don't even ask yourselves, why is Congo never developing until today? And yet Congo's resources can be used to colonize France, or they can be used to buy France. But Congo has no power over those resources. Ebola was manufactured. I don't know if at all you know that. There's so many diseases that were manufactured, and they'll tell you that eating baboons causes Ebola. Such foolishness. But we as Africans, we are just accepting them because we have not taken time to go a step ahead. We just go and pray in the church and we say that God will help us. We're not knowing where the problem is coming from. We should understand what happens. Politics takes the bigger part in controlling the people, even though the economy is the biggest thing. So market is the target of the capitalist. You get that? So when you understand what happens in Congo right now, you should understand the historicity, how Congo was colonized. That will require you to have some analysis and read about King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. You'll understand how Congo was colonized. People were killed, they would cut off their penis, they would cut off their fingers, all those nasty things. And they used the missionaries whom we always praise, I don't know, in Africa. So apart from that, now imperialism is now what we're working with right now. America never colonized Africa, but it could get a chance of capturing the decolonizing subalterns into the Western imperialistic interests. That's how now America comes in. I want us one day to make a discussion on the modernization paradigm of how America came to capture us. It is another big discussion that can be discussed about alone. It's part of capitalism. So in that case now, right now, what we are operating under right now is the Western imperialistic interest. Now they'll tell us that globalization. Can you really accept for a crippled person to fight with a healthy person because it is a match that someone has to win? And you talk of globalization, are you really safe in that? So we shouldn't push for what we don't know. You know, I always tell people that one route to success.
Yes, kindly wind up.
Yes. So I always tell that one road to success can be the same road to doom. Why do you have to get some people's ideas without understanding how they work? America had to stay for 150 years to reorganize its economy so that it can now face the free market model. Even like Europe, it had to take almost 150 years with protectionism, violence, state power to reorganize itself before it could now push for free market model. And here you are. We've been through all these things before, some 50 years ago, and you're already pushing for free market model. No wonder now we have the structural adjustment policies that are already now destroying us more than it is even enabling us to do some things that are good. So you should understand that things have to be changed, but as they have to be changed, we have not to copy and paste. We have to think critically before we can push for something, because we are making mistakes by.
Okay. Let me hold you a little bit. So okay. Yes, you've talked about slavery and in relation to capitalism, slavery, imperialism, creating class struggles, exploitation, all these related to capitalism. Now, I want you to be clear on the issue of the option. What do you think is the option? If not capitalism, what do you think is the right option? Just briefly.
Yes. You should understand, first of all, you have to first understand the society before you come for a solution or giving a solution out for a society.
Okay, depending on Africa, on the way you see Africa, I want you to give the policy alternative, because I believe you understand Africa as a Pan-Africanist. You already understand Africa. You've talked about how the 72% of the land in South Africa being owned by the white people. And I know you know the dynamics of Africa. So just take yourself as the president, maybe as the president of Africa. What policies would you implement to lift people out of poverty? Because you understand, we are unemployed in Africa, we have poverty. I just need the policy alternatives besides capitalism.
To answer you first, you should first understand that capitalism is a survival for the fittest in terms of how it happened in the jungle where we lived 5 million years ago. So survival for the fittest, now we have to replace it with the survival for the weakest. That's how we can manage poverty in Africa. We should now understand that it's time for us to be communitarians in solving African problems. We Africans, Aristotle will tell us that Africans are social animals as well as political animals. There is nothing that you can do that will be individually successful without the people. So we should aim for communitarian approaches to developing Africa. Africans are made up of, when you talk of the African societies, you should understand the dynamics of our cultures, our tradition, our history, so that you can give a solution.
I would like you to educate our viewers about what are the principles of communitarians, because capitalism they were talking about private ownership, free market trade, economy that is driven on the mechanisms of the market, such principles, rule of law, which are actually talked about in capitalism. So what could be the principles of the communitarianism ideology that you're talking about? What could be the governing principles for that communitarianism ideology? Thank you. Educate our viewers.
I'm sorry, I had some little interruption. What was the question?
Okay, I wanted to just break to make it so brief. I wanted you to tell us, because for capitalists, they told us the principles that are involved in capitalism: private ownership, the market-driven economy, and all that. So, and the rule of law. So I want you to also give the principles that would, because we need a social order. We need social order in any ideology that you bring in. So what principles could be guiding the communitarianism ideology as you advance? I would like you to educate our viewers, those on Facebook, those on YouTube, and those who are joining this Zoom session.
Yes, the principles guiding communitarianism would require us to offer things like social justice. Equality in the libertarian aspect is more of quality. It's like legal equality, but we are trying to push in for equality of opportunities, equality of property, and equality of access to the products. You have to increase on the purchasing power of the individuals before you bring in a company, before you bring in products like the iPhones for people to buy. The purchasing power has to be elevated. That's how China has made it up to this extent. That's how Sweden and Norway. Those Scandinavian countries have made it.
All right, thank you so much. I'll go to Peter Bismarck. Peter Bismarck is the CEO of the Institute for Liberty and Policy Innovation. Peter Bismarck is as well the Employment and Public Policy Analyst at the Institute for Liberty and Policy Innovation, all the way from Ghana. Peter Bismarck is a libertarian, and he is running a think tank promoting liberty in the Ghana country in Africa. So Peter Bismarck, LM Rodney, you've heard him very well. Now, as other speakers prepare questions, we're gonna have a session where each speaker will have to ask a question or two questions from a fellow speaker. From all the panelists, you have to note some questions. Now, going back to Peter Bismarck. Now, LM is talking about how capitalism is, has selfish interest, is about exploitation, is about creating class struggles, imperialism is related to slavery. How do you respond to that as a libertarian?
Right. Thank you, George. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation so far from other speakers. I think there is a substantial bank of dress they are wearing, who made it, the shoes, the phone, the appliances they are using, the Zoom, the link, everything we are using right now is made by a capitalist. It's made by a private individual. Remember that in every society, whether it is a capitalist society, whether it is a Marxist, Leninist society, a communist or fascist society, it is the private man that innovate to create. So once they create or they innovate, then the state will run in to regulate that innovation or that creation, or what we call invention. So you realize that in every society, it is the private man that drives sometimes what government have to even regulate. There are times government don't know that these things are important for individuals to consume. But once the private man is able to identify what is necessary for individuals to consume, then production sets in. Once production sets in, the government will run in to regulate those activities of the private man by taking money from his profit and his production. You see, the history of capitalism explained by my other colleague is right. But then we should also understand that we should not equate colonialism or slavery basically to capitalism. There are two distinct things that happened. But over the years, we have equated feudalism and then other kind of hardcore way of subjecting individuals into pain as capitalism. And we should also understand that every individual has interest in everything he does. Even the government has interest in whatever he does, because the government is made up of human beings who forms that institution. So there is no way you can downplay the activities of capitalists in a society. You know why Africa is still poor? We have so many problems we have identified on the continent, running down from leadership to what we call Africa is not producing well. But we've forgotten that when we are talking about the richest people across the globe, we see them in these capitalist societies. You get it? There hasn't been any African, no African on this continent, can we say, that has made his money only in Africa. At least he or she has to travel outside, get some kind of enlightenment, come down here, or maybe trade between the two countries or whichever countries he or she identify to trade with his products before he can be rich. And that rich cannot be compared to others that had made it in the capitalist society. So if we are in Uganda, in Ghana, in Nigeria, and others, we don't often have the billions of dollars we can use that to say that this person is the richest individual in the world. It doesn't happen. You remember the physicist who said that if he were to be in Africa, he wouldn't have been rich. But since he went to the US, he had been very, very rich. So it tells you that we have created an environment that is not conducive for capitalists to succeed. So if we think that capitalism is not good for Africa, then we shouldn't think of having individuals to be rich, because if they are not rich, they can't support people as what we term as the communitarian. Imagine in a society where people are poor, how do they become communal to support each other? That means it's going to be the tools used to support each other. It's going to be simple tools to solve complex problems, which is impossible. You see, so in whatever definition you would give it to capitalism, it is what creates the wealth. And everything about society is for people to overcome poverty. And you can only overcome poverty when you produce. And the production is done by the individuals. You see, and if in a society you don't own anything in the society, then even in African society, you will not be respected. The prestige will not be there. It's everywhere. If you travel across the continent, even my country, Ghana, how rich you are would determine the respect you'll be getting. So if people are making their monies from the private sector and they are becoming rich, they are using the cars they have to use, they have employed people, the respect is there. And then imagine you are in a society where you are poor. The respect wouldn't be there because you're not producing or earning anything. So you will see the difference between what we say as socialism, capitalism, or communism, as well as what my brother has even coined as communitarianism, which I think is something we have lived within Africa as communal individuals. But when it comes to communal individuals, we still have to create wealth. And that wealth will come through capitalism to complement our communal activities. Because we can't be communal, whereas we don't produce anything. You see? So I asked you the question, the dress, everything you are holding are produced by people. So if we don't have capitalists on the continent, then we must always export our primary goods to the capitalist countries, who would then convert that into other finished goods and brought back to those who don't have the capitalists, because the capital that will produce, and we don't have them on the continent. Therefore, we will export all our products to the capitalist states. That is why in Ghana, we produce the highest cocoa in the world, yet we don't have enough industries in the country to convert these cocoa beans into other chocolates or products that could be beneficial to us. It's not there. So we export all our primary goods, send them outside for the capitalists to then convert them into those finished goods and then bring them to us. You see, so the fact that we are saying that capitalism is not good for Africa, then we shouldn't think of becoming rich. Neither should we think of producing anything. So it serves us right to export our primary goods. It serves us right to trade with the Western countries and export, because we don't produce anything and we don't have the capitalists around. So I think that moving forward as a country or as a continent, we have to rethink how production can be done. Because currently on the continent, we are looking at public-private partnership, because government all over the countries that practice socialism failed over the years. And when they realized that they have failed, they said, okay, private sector, you are a bit efficient. So do you know what? Come and partner me. And you should understand that every government needs the private sector more than the private sector needs the government. Every government needs the private sector more than the private sector needs the government. And every business does not need the government, but the government will need a business to run the economy, because once businesses are created, government can tax those businesses to run the economy. In an economy where there are no businesses, that economy will collapse. And that economy collapsing means that you don't have capitalists producing. You see, because state enterprises had failed on the continent. Kwame Nkrumah came to nationalize so many industries in the country, and it started failing before he was thrown out of office. And since he left office, most of the industry had been converted into private use. And because of this transfer and others that were not transferred, most of the other agencies were not transferred in Ghana into private use or into private company, or they were not bought by the private. And they are being run by the state as we speak. Every year, the government is losing $1 billion Ghana cedis, which is equivalent to about, should I say, $200 million a year. The government is losing that in Ghana. That is state-owned enterprises owned by the state. These are the losses they are making. But the private company will tell you that within 6 months, I have made 56 million profit out of that. Then the government will run in and tax them. It is because capitalists have created those profits. That is what government is able to tax. So if we are not able to ensure that we have proper means of production to create real capitalists in this world or on this continent, look, our primary produce will surely be sent to outside for the capitalists outside to convert them into finished goods. That is why the dress we are all wearing are coming from outside. We are using China. Look, China, the example you gave us, China has a communist government with private, or what we say, capitalist institutions. So though the government is in control of the political institutions, it is the capitalists that produce and that export. You see, if you don't know this secret, that China is giving Africa a lot of money for its infrastructure development. Do you know where the money is coming from? Ghana, the Chinese government do not have money. So it is the capitalists in the country that will come and put their resources together into billions of dollars, come to loan those dollars to us. Then when they finish, look, they then send their capitalist companies to come and construct the road for us. It is not the government that comes, because the government don't have huge machine to do that. It's the capital that produce. So they will then come and work on our infrastructures for us, and then take the money back to their countries, and then they come back to you and look for money. You come for your loan, I mean the interest and the repayment, the capital and the principal, and send back and share among the capitalists in the country, of which the government serves as a guarantee, also get a commission on that. So that's the business. So if we don't want to be capitalists and we think capitalism is not good for Africa, we shouldn't expect to produce anything. We should always expect to export, and poverty will always be part of us.
That was fantastic. Let's have some questions here. LM, I know you have questions, you have burning questions. This is so fantastic, guys. Guys have a lot of issues here. Let me take Muhammad Yago. Yes, you can come and ask a speaker that you want a question. Muhammad, you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Freeman. I hope everyone is doing well. Before question, I want to clear some point to Comrade, the last person who has just talked about this issue, Peter Bismarck, on the issue of Pan-Africanism. It seems brother doesn't understand what Pan-Africanism is, and he seemed to be giving away Pan-Africanism to these communists and so on. So I think the same way you are talking about colonialism should be separated from capitalism and so on, also Pan-Africanism should be separated from scientific socialism or communism, because the basic principles of Pan-Africanism are unity of Africans, the struggle against colonialism or imperialism, and then the prosperity of the people of Africans at home and diaspora. So here, you don't need to be a communist to work for the prosperity of Africans, or struggle against imperialism or colonialism, or work for the unity of people of African descent. So here, term Pan-Africanism is very broad for some guys to understand. I think you need to move beyond.
Hey, all right. Thank you so much for that, Yago. Now, as you note that, I think they asked you, Peter Bismarck. Now, I'm going to give an opportunity to the panelists of today to ask a question. What question do you have for a fellow panelist? Name the panelists that you want to ask a question, and which question do you think it's really burning you that you would want to ask that panelist? I will start with you, Peter. I think you seem to be ready.
Yeah, myself?
Yes.
You're asking if I should ask a question, right?
No, I want you to ask a question to a fellow panelist. Any burning question that you have to a fellow panelist. Just name a panelist, then ask a question, 2 or 3 questions, or 1. Thank you.
All right. So it goes to the Africanist and the Pan-Africanist. I mean, they can answer. So I want to ask them: is Pan-Africanism a philosophy or is a movement? If it's a philosophy, what are the principles that guides the philosophy to ensure that Africa's prosperity is realized in both short to medium term on a continent, vis-a-vis the presence of the African Union? Then, if it is a movement, why is it a movement? And what is it sought to resolve on the continent in terms of Africa's prosperity?
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, let me hope the Pan-Africans, that question was going to you. Let me hope you are noting that question because I did note it. Now, I'll go to LM Rode. What question do you have? And that question goes to which speaker? As John prepares and Lina. LM coming. I see even your hand is up. Jordan, if you're not there, I'll go straight to John Mugabe Socrates. If you have a question, give us your question and which speaker does that question go to?
Okay. I'm
Jordan, if you're not there, I'll go straight to John Mugabe Socrates. If you have a question, give us your question and which speaker does that question go to?
Okay. I'm so grateful. I think it's a system which is designed for the strong to survive. The weak do not survive, and it's only a man survival for the fittest. And now we say that we need to create a society where we need to create a society where only the weakest can survive. I would like to be able to tell me how best can we have that society where only the weak can survive, because I let that to the class where I accept that there are some people who will perform well in my class, who will perform moderately, and there are those who will. But then it's said create a society, for example, in terms of a class where the failures are the one who will survive. So I want him to be able to answer that. How can we create that society where the weakest are the only who survive? And I would also like to say that capitalism is not for the strongest, because capitalism tells us that wealth is a product of money's capacity to think. And we think at a certain level sometimes, which varies. People who have gone on to think so much, use their talent, skills, and knowledge, have created many industry which have employed many, even those who would be weak, because today people who are employed by trading goods which are not even produced, so many people have been lifted. The last question I would like to ask the lady, I've just forgotten her name, is it Ella? She talked about about prices, that capital has a problem because it does not regulate prices. And I would like to tell you that that is not a problem. Africa, because capitalism does not use force and does not require anyone to come and enforce what should be the price or to fix, because there is what we call the forces of demand and supply, and need something, then free market will create that arrangement where prices are just regulated naturally. Because when you produce your goods and you hike the prices, where you know that people cannot have that money, they will not buy it even before someone forcing it. So you will have to, if you want to remain in business, you will have to make your prices come low so that people can buy it. If there is high demand and goods are just going to be scarce, then what you do, we are going to have people who will want to benefit from good prices. And then what does it come out? The outcome will be many goods being brought to market because everyone wants to benefit from the high prices. At the end of the day, the market will regulate itself because of competition to make the prices affordable so that many businesses can survive. So as Adam Smith said, the invisible hand, that invisible hand is always there. But so I'd like to conclude with this question to all. I don't have any problem with defining Pan-Africanism and whatever, but force, capitalism does not use force. But I see some of the speakers we had today who were anti-capitalism, they are justifying the use of force as a moral direction. So I want to know, to what extent is their system going to apply without enforcing people, without killing people, without causing scarcity, and without also displacing people to move away, ending into dictatorship? Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you for those questions. Let me hope LM Roden and other Pan-Africanists are recording this, because this goes to the Pan-Africanists. Now, I'm coming to Lina. Lina, do you have any questions for any speaker? Lina, are you there? Okay, if she's not there, let's go straight to LM Rodin or any other Pan-Africanist who is ready to answer the two questions.
Is that, are you all addressing me? My name is Eben. I couldn't tell if it was somebody else or me.
Oh, Abelton. Right. Do you have anything to say?
Oh, I'm very, very interested in hearing all you have to say. I'm rather new at all of this. I'm in the Jonathan Gullible book study, which I've enjoyed tremendously, and particularly hearing Mr. Mugabe speak. He gave loads of wonderful information the other day at the meeting. So I'm here to listen and to learn. And I'm enjoying what I'm hearing. Thank you.
So what do you think have you learned today from today's discussion?
Well, I was interested in what Mr. Mugabe said about the fair trade, about the prices, and that the government isn't actually forcing people, but and again, I'm new to this, but I was more interested in government force and what the government imposes on the people and the poor. So that was my main concern in my question. So I'm listening to get a good feeling for what that means. We have freedom of speech. That isn't the problem. The problem is that we have a new administration that is leaning more towards socialism. And because we're free people, we are trying to fight that. And I hope I'm being understood, because don't misunderstand me. America is free, and we're trying to hold on to that freedom and not be overcome by socialism thoughts. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you for those insights. Now I'll get back to Ellen. Ellen is back. Now you had a question from John Mugabe Socrates, and you had another question. If you can work with, I don't know if there is any other Pan-Africanist. Lina was not responding, so you could help respond to the questions from John and Peter Bismarck. And also, if you have questions for them, ask them their questions too.
Sincerely speaking, they've given me questions that I have to go through. I don't want to again add other questions. You have to understand one thing. In donations that come into Africa, every dollar that comes into Africa represents $4 going out of Africa. That's researchable if you're told it's possible. When you was talking about the market, the free market model, you have to understand one thing. Capitalism fails to understand how economics operate. It wants to leave the decisions to the invisible hands of the market. How can you leave the market to determine the social services to be given? That's why sometimes we have to bargain for social services. How can that be? It's very hard. He was talking about force, that capitalism doesn't use force. I want him to revisit on how power is. What are the dimensions of power by Stephen Luke. Okay, now let me give something according to Ugandan perspective. Last time when it was COVID-19, when people are going up country, you see how the prices had to increase, the tax fare or the bus fare or 20,000 is now being covered at a shilling of 180,000. Now here comes the private sector when there were issues of the oxygen scarcity. You realize that some people are paying 5 million to be saved from COVID-19. You don't have land, but you have to sell something, or you have to sell things that you have. So that's how the free market model is. It is never in the favor of anyone. So when I was trying to bring in the aspect of China, you have to understand these are social democratic states. You understand that? So it is very important that you should enable your critical minds to go beyond that. We're not against capitalism for sure. We need to understand. I myself in future might become an entrepreneur, because in the free market model, you either become a employed or you become an entrepreneur. But what I'm pushing for is domestic competition, not global competition. How can you prepare yourself to face the new world is what I want. If at all we can ensure, if at all our governments can invest in the internal transformative capacities of our countries, industrialization would be better than this good shot from USA or from China or getting second-hand clothes from there. You should understand one thing: we are pushing for domestic competition. If at we are okay in managing our things, we can compete with the outside world. How can you compete with the world that has been keeping itself 156 years, protecting its economy until it could develop to the extent that it could push for free market? Power, there is power as gender setting, power as decision making, and power as what? As preference control. When we now talk of the idea of Antonio Gramsci of the hegemony, you don't have to use force. You just have to use manipulative ideologies. That's how capitalism is. There's a deceptive nature of the GNP, the gross national product, where it can show that in Uganda, the development percentage has increased by some level. You realize that it's because of the strict good companies that have made it, and yet there are homeless people around it who are working, who are in poverty. Those deceptive concepts of economics should be understood before you can push in for anything. What I want is me and you to make an industry in the country, manage it well, and provide for our communities or produce for our communities before we can handle the outside world. America had to stay for 160 years before it could now face the whole world to push for its capitalistic interest. Someone was saying that I should not relate capitalism with colonialism. I'm telling you, I'm a political scientist. I don't understand how you understand this thing, but I've tried to show you the stages of development that has been happening until now. Because according to Karl Marx, capitalism can never operate only in one country. It has to now exceed the borders. That's why they push for globalization. How can we compete with America? America owns the World Bank, owns the IMF, with its sister empire, Europe. They control these things, even the CNNs, even the BBCs. So that's why they always give you the good side of how America is developing, but they will never tell you about the poverty rates in America, the societal things happening there, the divorce rates happening there, and you hear pushing for their ideas like feminism or capitalism, globalization, universalism. Knowledge is subjective.
Okay, Elem, to cut you short, John
Yes.
said that how do you intend to have a society where where the weak and the strong can survive? Am I right, John?
Yes.
Was that your question?
I want us to take this analogy of the family. Here, to Karl Marx, we say that it is to each according to his ability. I mean, from each according to his ability, to others according to their needs. You understand? So in the family, you will take care of your father. You will ensure that even though his hospital bills are like 5 million, you will pay for it without even him asking for something. Your children will be asking for school fees. You pay for that without even asking for what benefits you get from that. So there is that altruism in the family that we can put into the economy so that we can ensure that we control our economy so that it can be self-sustainable before we can face the world. Do you know what?
Okay, how do we put that in the economy in an organized way?
In an organized way. That's why I was now pushing in for a social democratic state. I've seen our grandmama here from America telling us that socialism is bad. It's bad according to our family. But I want her to tell us much about the Scandinavian countries, the Norways, the Sweden, how, and even part of China. How are they managing?
Which I think, I think that would be the conversation for another day because we might leave the topic we are in today. Now,
Yes.
you are talking about social democracy and communitarianism. Is there a difference between the communitarianism you say and what is the difference between communitarianism and social democracy?
Communitarianism can be fulfilled in these social democratic states where we intentionally or in an abstract sense call them the welfare states. You understand that the survival for the fittest would ensure that we can increase on their purchasing powers. Yes, what we need is to ensure that these people here can have the money to purchase what's in the market. Instead of saying that the market, you go there by will and you buy things by will. But do we have, do you know the slums that are in Uganda? The Katanga, the other places around Bugolobi,
okay,
those places.
Rodin, an example of Uganda as a country. Entrepreneurs are always crying of high taxes.
Yes.
And, you know, high taxes, the reason as to why we pay high taxes is because we have to maintain government's work. Government's work is, you know, provide the welfare, as we're talking about, the welfare state. So when we create welfare state, do you think that we shall again pay more taxes to maintain the welfare state?
Thank you for that wonderful question. I'm also not.
Uganda is a socialist state.
You have to understand the state is again a little bit subjective in one way. You have to understand, according to Marxists, that the state is controlled by the economically dominant class, and that is probably the superpowers that we call the Americas, the whatever, the China now, for instance, right now. You should understand one thing.
So Uganda is controlled by the superpowers. Do you mean Uganda is controlled by the superpowers?
That's how our economy is right now. Why is it that we have a lot of imports than exports? Have you ever asked yourself that?
Thank you for that. And this brings us to the session where each speaker, thank you, Rodin. This brings us to the session, I think our time is going. This brings us to the session where every speaker is just gonna give their remarks. But before that, we're gonna have questions. Everyone who has a question, please type it. If you have Facebook comments, if you have comments from YouTube, please, Dennis and Joram, help me read those comments, those questions to our speakers today. And after that, we shall have the remarks, the last words from you, and then we shall call it a day. Joram, if you're there, and Dennis, anyone who has a question, this is the time for you. Okay, silence means there is no question. All right, I'll go straight. I will not waste time. I'll go straight to our speakers, starting
I've got a question.
Yes, please. Where is the question? St. Juliana, St. Juliana Schools, raise the hand. Yes, St. Juliana, you can unmute and ask your question.
I've got a question also. It goes to Miss Appleton.
Go on, please.
Yeah. The question is, most a proponent for capitalism, though my question is there any relationship between having labor unions, cooperatives, and capitalism? Is there any way they relate? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. John, can you answer that? Oh, Peter?
Yes, I was answering that question.
Okay.
The one thing I'm concerned about right now
Okay.
is we have so much, and it may not relate to your question. I have a little hard time understanding, hearing real well, but I would like to say this. I heard someone mention the news media, CNN and some of these news media. Right now in America, the news media is opinions seem, particularly with CNN, the news group CNN, they give very politically oriented comments based on politics. They seem to continually, because of their not confusing people that are listening to the news, particularly on things such as the COVID. Right now in America, we are suffering all of a sudden from the COVID variant. And the COVID variant is very, very contagious. And there has been some confusion. Some of us have been vaccinated. I'm older, I'm 80. So therefore I have been vaccinated by the Pfizer vaccine and felt very comfortable with that. Well, in this variant, even people who've had the vaccine are getting light cases, mostly of the COVID Delta variant. But now with the news media and all of the different kinds of opinions, there is a shot, a second booster shot that is coming available. And there is a huge amount of controversy on whether that's safe or not, or if it can in fact kill you. It's a very, very bad situation. And people, based on, I think, the political party to which they are really very, very involved in, whether or not that has in fact swayed them in their various opinions. Like I said, we have in this country, we have the Democrats and we have the Republicans. And as I mentioned earlier, the two parties have conflicting opinions. I hope that helps some in your question. It may be
Thank you, Appleton. So now I'm seeing another question from St. Juliana Schools. You are raising a hand. Do you have a question?
I don't necessarily have a question. I just had an addition, a submission I would want to add in. Thank you so much, host. I want to send my my submission to the American judge and to let her know that Africa is not actually good for the capitalistic ideology that she's praising, because we have seen the American world trying to extend support to African countries, but all these capitalistic support they send to us come with strings attached and promoting neo-colonialistic tendencies in most of the African countries. I'm very much in agreement with whatever Elem Rodney has been submitting in this, because we have always imported a lot of products from the Western world, and this has affected the development of African economies. Basically, because if you take just a feasibility study in Uganda, for example, you realize that over 80% of the products that we use in Uganda is actually coming from other countries and actually outside the African continent. And this has affected too much the economic development of this country, because we keep rotating around produce from outside. And this has affected even programs brought by the president himself. He talks about boo-boo, but you realize that government itself is every time bending down to the Western world. And this has deprived us so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Host.
Thank you. I hope that will be responded to briefly.
Yeah. Let me briefly answer this. Very sorry.
Yes, Bismarck. Yes,
so
Peter. Answer it briefly.
One who just made a remark that, you know, can I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
Right. So I'm saying that, yes, I like the fact that we often import from the Western countries into Africa, but we have not seen that we do not have the production capacity so that these primary goods that we import into the Western world, for them to convert them into finished goods and then brought them back to us. We are failing in the aspect of increasing more individuals or enhancing the vertical system to create more capitalists who will produce. In any capitalist society, we say that we are both consumers and producers. But it looks like in an African society, we are more consumers, we produce nothing. If you go to the markets all over Africa, apart from African symbols that have been converted into chains, into necklaces, and dresses and few other items that can be bought with few, smaller dollar at $10, $5, $60, and $100, we think we are producing. We are not producing. Look at the fact that we produce no machine. We manufacture no machines here. You see, but the Western world will produce all the machines and it will be sent to Africa for Africa to use it to mine its goods and minerals and then export them to them. It is because we have failed as a continent to have capitalists on the continent. Once capitalists are not in the continent, we should be expecting the exportation of our primary goods for capitalists to convert. And I've said this over and over. Also understand that if we are saying we have, what's the name, IMF, the World Bank, so we cannot compete with the America. What were we doing where America was developing? We didn't go to war. The World War didn't happen in Africa. Both the First and Second World War never happened on African soil. America also didn't go to war. So what were we doing? Those who went to war are also ahead of us. Look at Germany. Look at Australia. They are all ahead of us now. Look at France. All the countries that went to war are ahead of us. So what was Africa doing at that time? During the time of enlightenment, what were we doing? You see, so at the time where others were fighting, instead of us, just like what America did, instead of us to start looking at how best we can produce stuff, process stuff, go into the industrial revolution, how we could also convert our minerals into other items for export, we never did. You see, so because we have failed in that regard, we always think that, yes, capitalism isn't good for Africa. Again, remember that during the time of enlightenment, what was taught in schools across the globe, especially in the Western world, was socialism. That was what was taught in schools. Marxist theories, the Leninists, the Guspa plan, those were the things taught in schools. So when African technocrats also traveled outside to go and learn, they brought the socialist ideas onto the continent and implemented, because capitalism was not taught. Because capitalism looks more organic, which was not in the classroom for you to have principles and guides to allow people to learn and come and implement. Because the organic aspect of it is the difficult for every government to do. That is why we all went to learn Leninist, Marxist, and other philosophies where government control becomes the order of the day. So we should always see the fact that once we did not learn capitalism in school, or when we went outside to go and learn these Western books or read Western books, everything was about social. Kwame Nkrumah, my president, who led Ghana to have the first independence on a continent, learned socialist concept. And when he came to Ghana, he tried to implement the socialist concept and let so many things ajar. That led to his overthrow. You see, so it is the fact that the Enlightenment stage was when we were supposed to look at our African context of capitalism, which we failed to do. Yes, capitalism is an important idea. Socialism is an important idea. All these are important ideas. So how
on that point, Peter, on that point, LM said that capitalism is a colonial ideology. Now, can you try to trace the roots of capitalism, you know, from traditional Africa? How did it start? Traditional, is it an imported idea? Do you really agree with that? Or you can explain about its origins in Africa? Thank you.
You see, Africans had their own form of capitalism, which existed before colonialism. We were trading among ourselves within and with, at the other aspect of within the sub-region, of which Ghanaian communities and ethnic groups will trade among themselves. Then we do this trade between borders, Nigeria, South. Even currently we do those trade, but it's very minute. The rate is very minute. So our system of capitalism trades right from the 17th century right to date. But that when colonialism entered, distorted African societal kind of capitalism, of which the technocratic aspect also set in when people went outside to go and learn socialistic ideas, came in to implement them at the leadership level, at the macro level. So we then left behind the African style of capitalism and then started learning the technocratic system of capitalism, which is more crony, and it's more like the chronism type. So if you look at what we are practicing, or what America is practicing, it is not a free market capitalism, it's a crony capitalism. And if we want to look at Africa's free market capitalism, that started way back before the Portuguese invasion in Congo, of which they tried to segregate us through giving people, putting hatred among ethnic groups. Look at what happened in Rwanda. When the Belgians came around, they tried to put in hatred between ethnic groups, whereas in those days, they were having free market capitalist kind of trade system. So it existed, but the mistake we did was to build on it in a form of documenting that, learning that in our schools, and implement that at the macro level of our leadership, of which we failed to do. So when others went to school in outside and brought the idea of socialism, of which government control supposed to be, then we were okay because we have overcome colonialism as a form of taking our minerals away, subjecting African individuals into kind of molestation and massacre. So we were all happy about the idea that, yes, let us learn the foreign kind of socialism. So what I want to say is that capitalism existed in Africa way back before colonialism, before the first invasion on Congo. And if we had done our best to document some of these things, we could have been producing more than to export our primary goods. That is why we are suffering. That is why socialism is accepted all over. Because Kwame Nkrumah brought the idea from the US, from the US, from the UK, because they never taught Kwame Nkrumah the idea of capitalism. He only learned the socialism and came to Africa and implemented. And when he started to do this Pan-African movement, that is where countries like Zambia, that the countries like Angola, all Senegal, they all joined the socialist movement. And currently, as you see, all those countries have failed in leadership. So we shouldn't blame the fact that capitalism is about exploitation. If I have my business and I've not asked you to come and work for me, and you think you are working for me and I'm paying you a certain amount which you don't like, you can opt out. There's a free will. I'm not forcing you. Nobody is compelling you to do any work for me. You see, right now we are saying job creation on the continent. The youth are unemployed. Everybody is unemployed on the continent. Why are the people unemployed? Because we do not have the production, the manufacturing on the continent to employ us. We go and we bring petty materials onto the continent and we say we are producing. It is wrong. So we have to grow our capitalist society in the African context and produce more, save more, and create their employment. The final thing I would say is that Africa has the youngest youth on the continent, but in 50 years' time, Africa will have the oldest generation on the continent. What are we doing about that to save them if we don't have the production capacity to do more with our products, our mineral resources? Thank you.
Oh my God. I believe I've learned a lot of things in this discussion, but I didn't know some of the things, I didn't know them actually, but I've learned them. Let me hope even you, the viewers, those who are following on Facebook, those who are here and those on YouTube, learned something today, whether you're capitalist, whether you're socialist, whether you're libertarian. I hope this perspective today made you to learn something new. Now, I'll go to the what last word, what recommendation, what last word do you have to you, our panelists today? You know, the debate about capitalism, socialism will never end, and we can even discuss for days, for weeks, for months, because this debate has been there. But let me hope we learn something, because I know some of us here might become leaders in the future, but we've realized how these things work. We always see them as, you know, are unique, but today we've really gotten to understand what they mean and how they can be implemented. What principles do govern these ideas? I believe there must be some leaders who are following us on the Facebook page, member of parliaments who are going, those who are member of parliaments, those who are going to stand for leadership positions. And now I believe they have a proper understanding of what strategy, what policy could they implement when they're in leadership positions. Now, I'll go straight to learning.
Thank you very much, George Justice. I'm very happy we've shared these ideas. It is still something that we still have to continue with. I don't think it's only one Zoom meeting that can help enable us to understand these things. There are very many extreme excesses of capitalism that we should understand. But what I'm pushing for is domestic competition. If at all we can have that kind of capitalism that is in Africa, that's why we are pushing for Pan-Africanism. If at all we can push in for things that are basically in the African context before we can hope the world to be better. I told you before that each dollar that comes into the country in form of donation represents $4 going out of the country. Where is poverty coming from? Do you understand that? The structural adjustment policies are there, privatization is coming in, social, and even when they're giving the donations, they will tell you that not for social development. Yes, so they're just for infrastructure, but they will tell you that if at all you use them in hospitals, it is not acceptable. There are some strings attached. So we should understand the dynamics of capitalism. I would prefer to give an idea that we should read about the Confession of the Economic Hitman for us to understand the dynamics of the multinational corporations, the term that John Perkins uses as the corporatocracy, to understand how these things are destroying us as a people. So it's very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Loden. You are a fantastic speaker. I loved your contributions. And, you know, I believe to the viewers who are watching us, this was really the rightful sourcing of speakers. I got speakers, and these are speakers that I've really loved the knowledge. All right, John Mugabe. Yes, we come to you, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that I'm grateful that Mr. Rodin has said he may become an entrepreneur in future. I will be able to defend his business to be able to make profit. Number one. Number two, he will have the freedom to share his profit to whom he wants. It will not be a force to sacrifice his business for the sake of the people who are suffering in society. Last about that, this is to the young people. I sit at the Chamber of Commerce. A few days back, some of the members in Entebbe were saying, why do people buy goods in Kampala? They should buy them in Entebbe to support Entebbe. Why do we locally import from Kampala? So they were saying we need a law. I said we don't need a law, and we don't have to blame the entrepreneurs in Kampala. Let us tell our entrepreneurs here in Entebbe to produce quality goods, to be able to market it and to make it affordable. And how? Let us, as we advise the municipality, to be able to make licensing easy and to be able to let profit improve the quality of production. So it is the same thing which we who are here, all members know. We don't have to fight to broke the TV or the phone I have, which is coming from South Korea. We have to think, because we know that wealth is a product of money thinking. Let us think how best we can. Today, we cannot trade very freely with our neighbors. We cannot trade very freely with South Sudan. Rwanda has put there some laws. And that one also undermines Africa's opportunity of creating wealth. The trading within Africa is more hard than even trading with Japan. So what is the problem? The problem is not capitalism, and capitalism is there to break that problem. Lastly, we should take interest in this. The only place where a Black or an African is not able to produce more wealth is in Africa. And the only place where African is not able to utilize all his talents, it has been Africa. That's why when you look at the Olympics, if we are taking it by color, Africans who are in other countries with systems, with environment enabling them to be the best, have won more gold, the Black American and the Black Europeans, those who are related to their country, than the Africans who are here. Then we should ask why. It is because of the environment. And those countries which have got more and more, look at their system. The quality you produce and all your whatever skills and what, it is rewarded. It is not forced to be socialist or to be communal. So I would end by saying that all of us who are here, someone talked about altruism. Sometimes altruism is taken to be a sacrifice. I don't want anyone to sacrifice his life. My brother, Rodin, you're still young, to sacrifice your life for the sake of the poor or the Taliban. I'm a Christian and I'm a born again. What I have to do is to be able to produce and have a portion which I can willingly or voluntarily give to the poor, give to those who are not able. But I also have to encourage them that they were not created to be poor. They may be poor because they cannot be allowed to own property, or they cannot be able to sell goods and make profit. So I would like us to promote some institution, like institution of owning what you produce, and even having property rights, land, be able to use it. But I also like us to know the rule of law. Rodin talked about legal equality. Capitalism is not about legislation. We don't legislate laws, but it's about natural laws that live as you let me live. And God created us, but we are not equal. Someone who becomes super runner athlete, let us not become jealous or envious. Let us allow him to be the best as we also get into our aspiration of being the best who are. I don't agitate for equal society. I agitate for equity, where everyone is able to get according to effort and be able to share with others. So that is it. Last one is the market. If you want to change a world, create a business. I encourage all of us here to think about creating a business, because when you create a business, you are going to be able to employ someone. And the more you will invest in it, is the more you are going to get the sweeper, the cleaner, and also the accountant. And at the end of the day, you may end up employing 10 people. Don't look at government. Government does not produce any good, but government only looks for people who have produced and take a portion out of them, and it serves it so fast, but it promises that it's going to create a socialist society where we are all equal. So thank you very much. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Let us keep on conversing. Let us not debate to win or to do what, but let us share ideas and be able to grow our society, be able to grow Africa. Africa can be wealth, Africa can trade, Africa can sell goods out, and let us also be able to import what we don't have. Because if we cannot produce it, but if we have money to get it from out, that is okay, that's fair. Thank you very much. May God bless you. Good night.
Wow, thank you. I'm still reflecting on all the insights he said. Really, to become someone with an ideology, I think you need to read a lot of books. I don't know. Okay, let's go to Peter Bismarck. Peter Bismarck, all right. Let's first go to Lina Abunyewa, if she is still there, before we come to Peter. Lina, are you still there? Oh, maybe she's off. Okay, let's conclude with you, Peter Bismarck.
Were you talking to me? I'm sorry. I wasn't sure whether my name is Eben. And
sorry, I've been a Pluton, I meant someone else.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Peter Bismarck, you can come in, your concluding remarks.
Right, thank you so much. I think I'm happy for the engagement, but what I'm very sorry to my hair has grown because of COVID-19. I've not been to the barbering shop for the past 3 months. I'm just scared of maybe some of these machines could be infected. So I'll be indoors. Yeah, right. Yes. So I think I'm grateful for this engagement, and I would say that Africa is a prosperous nation until we start thinking of how we would work on policies or ideas that could have the capitalist element of capitalism in all our transactions. I'm also happy that the African Union has also realized that capitalism is important. That is why they have started the African Continental Free Trade program. That shows how important capitalism is. And that also shows how important free market is. That is why we are having the trade agreement so that Africans can trade among themselves. If free market capitalism is not important, I'm not sure we could have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And it's also for us to understand that once that Continental Agreement had been signed, and it has been signed, it's already in motion, what we are lacking is the commitment to understand how free market principle could lead the entire African Continental Free Trade. So they shouldn't just make laws. They should open the borders for everybody to move about. We have the AU passport, but I've never seen one before, so I don't see how the free movement is. It's also expensive to travel across the continent. Now, traveling from Ghana to Kenya, for example, is about $700 to $800. I could use the same amount of money to go to Dubai or to go to China or India. So why wouldn't I trade in China, or why wouldn't I trade with India or Dubai? So if we really want to produce and make Africa a prosperous continent, then we have to restructure our kind of leadership, our political leadership from the macro level through to the micro level. We should also understand the need to stop all these border disputes on the continent, especially between Congo, Rwanda, and then we also have, recently we had one between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, which had been resolved. But there are a lot of border disputes on the continent, which is affecting the entire African Continental Free Trade. So once African Union has accepted that free market is key, that is why they have also implemented the African Continental Free Trade. And finally, what I would say is that it is important to know that once systems do not favor individuals, obviously we are going to create more poverty individuals than we are thinking of. That is why we do not produce anything. So African leaders should start thinking of how they will be more productive and make individuals set up business. It's only businesses that solve poverty and nothing else. Government doesn't solve poverty. Government, rather, in its legislations, create poverty by taking from what belongs to others. Government there's nothing also on this continent or in this world that we call government funded. Everything is taxpayers funded. It is the taxpayer that funds whatever the government does. So if you don't have more businesses who could support the economy to grow, we will have more poverty individuals. And we could also have more systems that drives the poverty agenda. So we should not just sit and vote each and every year. Zambia has re-elected, had a new president. the slogan is just the same. Government is not working, government is not working. Then we need to change. Change of government is not about change of consciousness. For us to change consciousness is for us to change our system of governance from where government controls everything on the continent. Government controls everything within every society. Your health, your water, your light, your movement, it is always given by the government through what we call the constitution. Yet government always violates all these constitutional provisions. But when individuals violate these provisions, you are going to be jailed. It is time we start rethinking and ensure that we have a system of governance that gives freedom to everybody to create jobs, to employ and to be employed, and to also enhance the production rate on the continent. So we don't export more, but we will import. Look at Africa. You cannot start a manufacturing company on the continent until you have millions of dollars. It is because there are so many taxes if you want to enter into business. It is so difficult to set up a manufacturing company in my country, Ghana, and elsewhere. It is also because there are huge taxes taken from individuals. The barriers are too much. This is why if you look at if you look at the Global Economic Freedom Index, you will see that the last 5 African countries, the last 5 countries on the index are from Africa. And if you look at the World Bank Ease of Doing Business, you will see that the last 5 countries are also from Africa. It tells you why it is difficult for us to be prosperous, because government has already set up the structures to create poverty than to create prosperity. And it's up to us, for we the young ones, to rethink and ensure that we have a system of governance that creates more freedom for prosperity than more legislation for poverty. Thank you.
Oh my God, thank you so much for that. Now, you forgive us those any mistake that we made in this video, in this session. We are learning. We shall keep on improving our sessions, whatever mistake we made. So guys, thank you for honoring our invitation. I really thank you so much. All of you have you responded positively. That really shows a sense of responsibility, whether Pan-Africanist, whether capitalist, whether libertarian. I really loved the response you guys and the teamwork you've given us. So I would like to thank our partners, Action for Liberty, that is Analyst, for the Zoom. And we also thank JM Visuals International for the design. Everyone.
Good night.
Good night.